Korean billionaire Mafia boss sees a black maid carrying his disabled father home. He instantly rushed over and then froze. Shin Kang-Ho was in the middle of a video conference, the kind where business meant negotiating a hostile takeover defense with his board while his fingers hovered over the delete button for 10,000 employee emails. When his phone lit up with an alert from his father's medical monitoring service, transport failure, patient location moving, care provider unresponsive, his blood turned to ice. "We're done here," he said in Korean, closing his laptop mid-sentence. His CFO started to protest about the Shanghai investors waiting, but something in Shin's expression, the razor-sharp focus that his competitors had learned meant he was about to dismantle their entire strategy, made the man reconsider. Shin was out of his glass-walled office before anyone could object, his assistant scrambling to reschedule the 17 remaining meetings on his calendar. His father, Chang-Ho, was 68 and had been wheelchair-bound since the massive stroke 4 years ago. He was supposed to be safe in the most expensive medical residence in Seoul, with round-the-clock nursing and transportation services that Shin personally vetted and paid triple the market rate for. He wasn't supposed to be mobile without assistance, wasn't supposed to be outside unsupervised, wasn't supposed to be moving through Gangnam in the rain at 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening. Shin tracked the alert notification, his driver weaving through Seoul traffic at speeds that would have gotten anyone else arrested. But the police knew better than to pull over Shin Kang-Ho's black Genesis GV80. They knew who he was, what his company controlled, and they knew that some battles, particularly with men who donated generously to the Police Benevolent Fund, weren't worth fighting. He found them 6 blocks from the medical residence, and the sight made him command his driver to brake so abruptly that the car behind them laid on its horn in protest. A young black woman, maybe 165 centimeters tall, wearing a home care aide's uniform with a name tag that read Alina and a thin jacket that was doing nothing against the downpour, was carrying his father. Not pushing a wheelchair, not supporting him as he walked, actually carrying him, one arm under his knees and one supporting his back, struggling against his weight and the rain and the steep incline of Gangnam-daro. His father's wheelchair sat abandoned on the sidewalk 3 blocks back, one wheel twisted at an angle that explained everything. It had broken, the expensive, supposedly indestructible medical-grade wheelchair had failed. And this stranger, this small woman who looked like she weighed maybe 55 kilograms soaking wet, had picked up his 72-kilogram father and was carrying him home. Shin was out of the vehicle before his driver fully stopped, his tailored Tom Ford coat billowing behind him as he ran toward them, dress shoes splashing through puddles, 17 missed calls already lighting up his phone. The rain was cold, the kind of autumn storm that turned Seoul's streets into rivers, and she was drenched, her uniform plastered to her frame, her braids slick against her neck. The woman, Alina, looked up at the sound of his approach and their eyes met. Hers were dark brown, exhausted beyond measure, determined in a way that hit him like a physical blow. Rain streamed down her face and she was breathing hard, each step clearly agony, but she didn't stop moving. Her arms were shaking, her legs trembling, but her grip on his father remained secure, protective, gentle despite the strain. "Let me help," he said in English, already reaching for his father, his hands instinctively moving to take the burden from her. "I've got him," Alina panted, adjusting her grip even as her whole body shook with effort. "Almost there. Just 2 more blocks. I'm his son." Shin's hands were already sliding under his father's weight, his voice more commanding than he intended. "Let me take him." His father made a sound, not quite words, the stroke had stolen most of his speech, but a grunt of recognition. "Adul. Son." His eyes, still sharp despite everything the stroke had taken, found Shin's face, and something in that gaze made Shin's chest constrict. Surprise. Relief. And underneath it all, a question: where were you? He didn't know it yet, but this woman carrying his father would teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. Success means nothing if you're not there for the people who made it possible. Before we continue, if you want to discover how this powerful story unfolds and what happens when a billionaire's world is shattered by one act of kindness, Make sure to hit the subscribe button on this channel. Drop a comment telling us which country in the world you're watching from. Each view helps bring more transformative stories like this one to life. The transfer was awkward, intimate. Their bodies pressed close as they maneuvered his father between them, and Shin caught everything. Her Ghanaian accent, exhaustion carved into her features, strength in her lean arms, the name tag reading Alina. Up close, he saw the determination that kept her moving and the kindness in how she squeezed his father's shoulder. "It's okay, Mr. Lee," she said in careful Korean. "Your son is here now." In the car, Shin watched from the rearview mirror as Alina wrapped his father in the emergency blanket, speaking softly about dinner and weather, her broken Korean gentle and unhurried. His father, who barely acknowledged Shin's monthly visits, held her hand, made small sounds of gratitude. "Gamuo! Gamuo!" Lee Chang-Ho looked at her with something Shin couldn't remember, seeing directed at himself in years. Trust. The realization settled in his chest like a stone. This stranger had shown his father more tenderness in 20 minutes than Shin had managed in 3 years. She'd carried a man she barely knew through the rain while he'd been discussing profit margins. He gripped the door handle, throat tight, and said nothing at all. His father's apartment was expensive solutions. Hospital-grade bed, motorized lift system, monitoring equipment that fed data to 3 different medical apps on Shin's phone. Everything money could buy, arranged by people paid to care. The evening nurse arrived 20 minutes late, still typing on her phone. "You're terminated," Shin said in Korean, his voice surgical. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." She started to protest. One look at his face stopped her. Alina had already moved to his father's bedside, speaking softly, checking his temperature with the back of her hand, adjusting his blanket with a tenderness that made Shin's chest tight. She treated him like a person, not a patient. Asked him questions even though he couldn't answer. Told him about the rain, about dinner, about tomorrow. His father's eyes followed her. Trusting. Calm. When she finally stood to leave, Shin was waiting with an envelope. 5 million won. More than she'd make in months. "For what you did tonight," he said, extending it. Alina looked at the envelope like it was something contaminated. "I don't want your money. It's not payment. It's gratitude. Your father needed help." Her English was quiet, firm. "That's what people do. We help. Most people would have called someone. You carried him 6 blocks. Most people are." She stopped herself, shook her head. "You think money fixes everything? It doesn't fix not being here." The words hit like a slap. "Excuse me. 3 jobs." Her voice hardened. "I work 3 jobs. Send most of it home to Ghana. My mother's sick, for siblings in school. I'm exhausted every single day. But I'm not for sale, Mr. Shin. I didn't help your father so you could throw money at your guilt. That's not. When's the last time you actually sat with him?" She met his eyes, unflinching. "Not checked on him. Not reviewed his charts or paid his bills. When did you last just sit with him?" Shin's jaw clenched. "I visit monthly." "That's not what I asked." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. "I thought so," Alina said quietly. She moved toward the door, then paused. "He talks about you. In his own way. Shows me pictures. He's proud of you, Mr. Shin. But I don't think what he wants is your success. I think he just wants his son." The door closed softly behind her. Shin stood alone in the apartment's clinical silence. His father was already asleep, face peaceful in the dim light. 70 million won worth of medical equipment hummed around him. And Shin realized he had no idea how to simply be present in this room. No idea at all. Shin spent the next morning doing something he hadn't done in years. Research that had nothing to do with markets or competitors. Alina Mensa, 28. Employed by Seoul Care Services for 3 years. According to the agency's shift logs, obtained through methods he didn't examine too closely, she worked 50 to 60 hours weekly, picking up doubles whenever available. Her remittance records showed 80% of her income transferred to Ghana every month. She was exhausted because she was keeping a family afloat across an ocean. His phone buzzed. "VP Kim, third call this morning." The malfunction in the home assistant units. We're looking at potential recalls. The board wants. Handle it. Shin's eyes stayed fixed on his screen, on the pattern of Alina's relentless work schedule. Sir, the investors are panicking. Stock dropped 4% at opening. I said handle it. He ended the call. Your father doesn't need your guilt checks. He needs you. The words had burrowed under his skin like a splinter. At 2 p.m., Shin did something else unprecedented. He went to his father's apartment unannounced, outside his usual monthly schedule. The nurse looked startled. Mr. Shin, we weren't expecting. I know. He moved past her into the living room where his father sat in his replacement wheelchair, staring at the Han River through floor-to-ceiling windows that Shin had paid for, in an apartment Shin had bought, surrounded by equipment Shin had selected. Everything here was Shin's money. None of it was Shin. A bioji. He sat on the sofa, hands clasped between his knees. His father turned his head slowly, surprise flickering across his features. Silence stretched between them like a chasm. Shin's mind raced through conversation topics, medical updates, equipment functionality, the new neurologist's credentials, but everything felt hollow. He stood, needing to move, and his hand brushed against something on the side table. A photo album. Old, worn leather. Shin opened it, and his breath caught. There. His father carrying him on his shoulders, both of them laughing. Age 4, maybe 5. Another photo. His father asleep in a taxi, head against the window, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Another. His father at Shin's university graduation, pride and relief and bone-deep weariness all visible in his smile. He gave up everything. The realization hit like a physical blow. His father had worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, sacrificed his health and youth and any chance at his own happiness. And what had Shin given back? Money. Guilt checks. Monthly visits measured in obligatory minutes. Shin closed the album with shaking hands. I need to go. In his car, he sat with the engine off, staring at nothing. He needed to find Alina again. Needed to understand how she could give so freely what he couldn't manage with all his resources. Then, for the first time in years, Shin Kang-Ho put his face in his hands and broke. Shin found her at 11 p.m. in a 24-hour coffee shop near Gangnam Station, hunched over the cheapest item on the menu. Plain Americano, long cold, with her phone propped against the sugar dispenser. Korean language app. Vocabulary drills. She looked up when his shadow fell across her table, and her expression shifted from surprise to wariness to something like resignation. Ms. Mensa, may I sit? It's a free country. But her tone said barely. Shin sat, posture straight, hands folded on the table like he was opening a negotiation. I've been thinking about what you said. About my father needing more than money. He paused, then delivered what he'd rehearsed. I'd like to hire you directly. Triple your current rate. You'd work exclusively for my father, set your own hours. No. Alina's voice cut like glass. I haven't told you the full compensation package. I don't care. She leaned forward, exhaustion sharpening into anger. I'm not for sale, Mr. Shin. You can't buy your way out of feeling bad. That's what you're doing, right? Throwing money at the problem, so you don't have to actually change anything. The words hit harder than they should have. I don't know how to be what he needs. The admission came out raw, unpolished. I only know how to solve problems with resources. Something shifted in her face. Then maybe stop solving and start sitting. It's not that simple. It is, though. Alina wrapped her hands around her cold coffee. You think I wanted to leave Ghana? My father died when I was 23. Heart attack, couldn't afford the surgery. My mother has diabetes, no insulin. For siblings still in school. I came here because someone had to. She met his eyes. I understand sacrifice, Mr. Shin. But I also understand presence. I call home every week. I'm there, even when I'm not. Shin's throat tightened. My mother died giving birth to me. My father raised me alone. Factory worker, night janitor, taxi driver. 3 jobs. Always exhausted. Always there. He stopped, forced himself to continue. His stroke happened while I was at a business dinner. 7:30 p.m. He collapsed in his apartment. Wasn't found until 3 a.m. because I was too busy to check on him. 8 hours delayed treatment. And now you punish yourself by staying away. Alina's voice softened. You feel guilty, so you throw money. But guilt isn't the same as love. One isolates, the other connects. I don't know how to connect with him. He can't speak, I don't know what to say. Shin heard the desperation in his own voice and hated it. Then learn. Alina studied him for a long moment. Teach me, you mean? How to be present with him. She was quiet, weighing something. Finally. Okay. But not for money. Because maybe you need this as much as he does. Shin nodded, not trusting his voice. For the first time, Alina saw past the billionaire to the frightened son underneath, and her expression gentled into something that looked almost like compassion. Phone off, Alina said when they entered his father's apartment the next evening. Computer stays in your bag. You're here to be present, not productive. Shin hesitated, then powered down his phone completely. It felt like severing a limb. Chang-Ho sat by the window, and when he saw his son, surprise flickered across his face. Twice in 1 week was unprecedented. Alina settled into the chair beside him, gesturing for Shin to take the other. Start simple, she said. Read him the newspaper. Not the business section, the human interest stories. Describe what you see outside. Play music he loved. Shin picked up the Jungang Ilbo, found an article about a neighborhood festival in Itaewon, and began reading aloud. His voice felt stiff, mechanical. But his father's eyes brightened, focused intently on his face. Halfway through, Chang-Ho made a sound, a grunt, frustrated, insistent. His good hand gestured wildly. He's trying to tell you something, Alina said. She leaned closer to Chang-Ho, watching his face. The festival? You went there. His hand moved in what might have been agreement. With Shin. Stronger movement. When he was young, Chang-Ho's eyes filled with tears. Another sound, another gesture, pointing at Shin, then himself, then moving his hand as if carrying something. He carried you, Alina narrated softly. You were sick. To the hospital? Chang-Ho nodded vigorously. Through rain. No money for taxi that week. He carried you 4 kilometers. Shin's hands clenched the newspaper. I didn't know that. His father gestured again, head tilted, eyes closing. Sleeping in the taxi between shifts, Alina continued. 30-minute breaks. That's all he had. Stop. Shin's voice cracked. I didn't know. I was so focused on making his sacrifices worth it, I forgot what he actually sacrificed for. He looked at his father, really looked. It was never about success, was it? You just wanted me to be happy. To be there. Chang-Ho made a soft sound, agreement, relief, love. Come 3 times a week, Alina said. Learn his language. It's all still there, you just have to listen differently. Shin did. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday evenings became sacred. He learned that 2 grunts meant yes, 1 meant no. That his father's left eyebrow quirking meant amusement. That certain gestures contained entire stories if you paid attention. After each visit, Shin and Alina shared coffee downstairs. She challenged every assumption he'd built his life on. Her honesty was brutal, refreshing, addictive. On the 4th week, Shin was reading when his father's hand, paper-thin, spotted with age, reached out and covered his. Shin froze, then gently squeezed back. Chang-Ho fell asleep like that, holding his son's hand. The first physical affection they'd shared in years. Shin didn't move until his father woke an hour later, afraid to break whatever fragile thing was rebuilding between them. The crisis hit on a Wednesday. Kongtaeka's home assistant AI malfunctioned during a software update, causing a house fire in Busan. No fatalities, but the media frenzy was immediate. By Thursday morning, stock had dropped 17%, and the board was demanding a full product recall. We need you in the office. Now! VP Kim's voice was frantic on the phone. Investors are threatening to vote you out if you don't get control of this. Shin stood in his father's apartment, newspaper half-read, Chang-Ho watching him with knowing eyes. I have to go, Abioji. Emergency. His father's expression didn't change, but something dimmed in his eyes. Friday brought worse news. His father's neurologist called. Chang-Ho's swallowing reflex was deteriorating. They recommended a feeding tube placement. Risky given his age and compromised health, but it could add months, maybe a year of improved quality of life. "We can schedule for Tuesday," Dr. Park said. "Morning slot 8 a.m. Tuesday. The emergency shareholder meeting was Tuesday at 9 a.m. Shin had spent 3 days preparing his defense, his strategy to maintain control of his company. "Schedule it," he told the doctor. That evening, Alina found him in the apartment hallway, staring at nothing. "The surgery is Tuesday," he said. "Same day as the shareholder meeting. So you'll be at the surgery." "I have to be at the meeting." "The company. What would your father choose?" Alina's voice was quiet, lethal. "You saving the company or you holding his hand?" "The company is his legacy. Everything he worked for, everything he sacrificed, it led to this. If I lose it, all those years of exhaustion and pain mean nothing." "No." Alina stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "You are his legacy. The company is just what you built running from that truth. You don't understand business. I understand a son choosing a boardroom over his father's bedside." She turned away. "He'll be alone. Again." Tuesday morning, Shin stood in Kongteka's lobby at 8:47 a.m., 15 floors below the conference room where his future hung in balance. His phone showed the hospital number. His father was in pre-op. He went upstairs. At 9:23 a.m., mid-presentation on quarterly projections and recovery strategies, his phone vibrated. "Hospital. Emergency. Cardiac arrest on the table," the nurse said. "We're working on him, but you should come now." Shin ran. He arrived to controlled chaos. Doctors shouting, machines screaming, his father's body jerking under defibrillator shocks. Then silence. Steady beep. Unconscious but stable. "We got him back," Dr. Park said. "He's in ICU." Shin stood at the glass window, watching his father's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance, and realized he'd almost lost him while defending stock prices to strangers. His phone buzzed. 15 missed calls. The company could burn for all he cared. Alina found him at midnight, still in the ICU waiting room, tie loosened, eyes fixed on nothing. She sat beside him without speaking. "I chose a PowerPoint presentation over my father's surgery." His voice was hollow. "Yes, you did. No comfort, no softening. The truth bare and cutting. And you'll have to live with that if he doesn't wake up," she continued. Shin's hands shook. "I don't know how to be unsuccessful. I don't know who I am without achievement." The admission felt like bleeding out. "Everything I've built, everything I am, it's all measured in wins. If I'm not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the success story, then what am I?" "Human," Alina said simply. "Your father was a factory worker who became a father. That was his achievement. Being present for you. My father's stroke happened because I missed dinner." The words came fast now, desperate. 7:30 we had plans. I canceled for a business meeting. He collapsed alone at 8:15. Wasn't found until 3 a.m. because I was too busy to check on him. Shin's voice cracked. 8 hours. The doctors said 8 hours delayed treatment is what took his speech, his mobility. I did that to him. Alina's hand covered his. Not fixing, not solving, just present. At 2:17 a.m., the ICU nurse appeared. "He's waking up." Chang-Ho's eyes opened, confused and groggy. They found Shin's face, and despite the tubes and exhaustion, his mouth curved into the weakest smile. Something broke in Shin then, a dam he'd spent years building. He gripped his father's hand, words pouring out in Korean. "I'm sorry, Abioji. I'm so sorry. For missing dinner, for choosing work, for not being there. For everything." His father's fingers squeezed back, barely perceptible but unmistakable. "I'm going to do better," Shin whispered. "I'm going to be here. I promise." Chang-Ho's eyes closed again, but his hand stayed locked in his son's. This time, Shin didn't let go. Shin called the emergency board meeting from the hospital corridor. "Effective immediately, I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence. VP Kim assumes interim CEO responsibilities." The video call erupted. "You can't be serious. The shareholders will revolt. There's a hostile takeover brewing. Then let them take it." Shin's voice was steady. "My father has 6 months, maybe a year. I have the rest of my life to build companies. You're throwing away everything you've built. No, Shin said quietly. I'm finally building what matters. He ended the call. Within a week, Shin had relocated to a modest apartment 3 blocks from his father's care facility. No penthouse view, no floor-to-ceiling windows. Just a 1-bedroom with morning light and proximity to what mattered. Daily visits became his routine. 7 a.m., he'd arrive before his father woke. They'd have breakfast together, Shin reading news, his father listening. Slow mornings. Simple rhythms. No agenda except presence. Alina remained their bridge. Through her, Chang-Ho's gestures became stories. A hand pressed to his chest, then reaching out. He's telling you about the day you were born. How he held you and promised to be enough, even without your mother. A gesture like driving, then sleeping. The taxi shifts. He'd park under highway overpasses, sleep 20 minutes, then keep driving to pay for your school uniforms. Each story was a gift Shin had never known he was missing. He never cared about Kongtech, did he? Shin asked one evening. He cared that you were driven to build it, Alina said. But he would have loved you just as much if you'd been a teacher or a taxi driver. He just wanted you happy. And present. Somewhere between the daily coffee talks and shared caregiving, something shifted between Shin and Alina. Her honesty became his anchor. Her presence his peace. One evening, Chang-Ho watched them laughing over a shared joke about Shin's terrible Korean pronunciation. His father's mouth worked, struggling, until one clear word emerged. Good. Shin looked at Alina, saw her smile, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 6 months became 8. Chang-Ho's health stabilized briefly, a final gift, before the inevitable decline began. The last 2 weeks, Shin never left. He slept in the chair beside his father's bed, woke to every sound, present for everything. They communicated through the picture board Alina had made, images and symbols his father could point to. Pride, love, forgiveness. Each gesture a complete sentence Shin had learned to read fluently. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Chang-Ho's breathing changed. Shin took one hand, Alina the other. His father's eyes moved between them, lucid and peaceful. Then his hands squeezed, both of them together, before going still. At the funeral, Shin stood before 50 people in a small chapel and spoke about learning what truly matters. My father taught me twice, he said. Once when he raised me. Again when he was dying. The second lesson took longer, but I finally learned. 1 year later, Shin had restructured everything. He'd stepped down as CEO, now served as board chairman with strictly limited hours. The rest of his time belonged to the Chang-Ho Foundation, supporting caregivers and stroke patient families. Alina ran the foundation's caregiver training program, her nursing degree finally complete. Shin had helped with tuition, but she'd earned every grade herself. What had begun as gratitude had become friendship, then something deeper. The engagement ring they'd chosen together was simple. She'd refused anything extravagant. On Saturdays, Shin volunteered with patient transport, carrying elderly patients who needed help, passing forward what Alina had taught him that rainy night. Now they stood at his father's memorial bench in Olympic Park, rain falling softly. Thank you, Shin said quietly, for carrying him home that day. Alina leaned into his shoulder. I didn't just carry him. I know. Shin turned to face her. You carried me home too. She smiled, took his hand, and together they walked through the rain, no longer running from it, but moving through it with purpose, present for whatever came next. His father would have called that good. Shin called it enough. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to choose what truly matters. Drop a comment below. What moment resonated with you most? Was it Alina's kindness, Shin's choice, or his father's final gesture? Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Thank you for listening, and remember, presence is the greatest gift you can give.